He's going to talk about the Agile tipping point. Could we run a round of applause, please? Thank you.
So I think first better introduce myself. I'm an Agile coach at the Netherlands. So what I do is just go into organizations, help them with their Agile transitions. What I used to do, I worked at Philips for 6 or 7 years, and I was a Scrum Master there. 2 former colleagues of mine are here. Pleased to see them. Welcome. And actually what I did there, I was a Scrum Master, and then gradually I became an Agile coach for the teams that were working there. And what I do now as well is I come to seminars, so I like this very much, that you're doing this stuff over here as well. That's why I wanted to join. And what I also do is I give trainings. So I'm a Scrum trainer for Scrum.org, so that means I'm doing the certified Scrum trainings for Scrum.org, professional Scrum Master trainings. And soon also doing the product owner trainings for Scrum.org. So that's me. I want to ask you a question. So who of you is actually driving an Agile transition? And that means trying to convince management, their teams, to do more with Agile and Scrum. Otherwise you wouldn't be here, was it? Yeah, that would be great. So, other question. Who of those guys who are doing that actually have a lot of trouble getting the message to the rest of the guys? Okay. There's an hand up there. So I think we had a nice session before on managing. The first session we had is about knowledge management. And that was a very true story that I had actually with my own as well. The biggest problem is getting that message across. And there was a story there from Ken and Jeff. They actually started with Scrum, and it took them 10 years to convince those guys. 10 years, imagine. Well, I worked at Philips, and glad you're doing better now, that's good. But it took me 6 years to go from a Scrum Master and a coach for one team to, a department with 4 or 5 teams doing Scrum. And 6 years is a lot. And it means a lot of gray hair and bald places on my head to do that. So, actually I was wondering at that time, what is happening here? Why don't I get the message across? Especially the first 2 years as a Scrum Master, I really sucked at that. I had a lot of information to tell, but for some reason they were not buying it. So, I was wondering about that. And at some point in time, I found a book. I like to read, and I found this book. Does anybody know Malcolm Gladwell? Malcolm is a writer for the New York Times, and he has great stuff. This is one of the best books he has, in my opinion. And this book is about viruses. He was doing some research, and he discovered that if you want to get a message across, or if you want a change somewhere to happen, there are a few factors that lead to that change. And he was studying that. So if you want to read about that kind of stuff, very interesting. I would read the book. So when I was reading that book, I started realizing that everything that we were doing for 2 or 3 years already with Scrum and Agile was actually making sense when using the book and all the theory that's in there. So I started comparing the stuff that we were doing, and that's actually how this session came alive. Together with a former Philips colleague of mine, we did this session also at a few seminars. And actually we had lots of fun there, and based on the fun that we had there and all this experience we shared, I updated the presentation as well. So there's a lot of practical stuff in here. So the nice thing is you talked about knowledge management, which is a very good idea, and this is more how to spread that knowledge. So the factors that lead to people buying the stuff that you're telling. So that's actually very cool. So the next 40 minutes I will talk about 3 factors, and I'm searching for the laptop here, but it's not.
You want this?
Yeah, there we go. Can we read that? So there are 3 factors that actually are very important when you think of viruses to happen. When are viruses going faster and slower? 3 factors. The stickiness factor, the law of the few, and the power of context. That's actually the pillars that are also used in the book to explain the theory behind viruses and how they spread. So I'm going to elaborate on all of them. So I'll use 10 minutes pro, 15 minutes pro factor to discuss. Let's see if this works. It does. Okay, first one, the stickiness factor. Stickiness factor is actually based on marketing. You all see a nice picture of Sesame Street. Does anybody not know Sesame Street? You do know or you do not know? You know it. Okay. Sesame Street, do they actually broadcast it in India as well? Okay, so for the kids, this is When they started with Sesame Street, that's actually quite interesting. They tried to educate kids by using a television. And that concept, when they started first, they were the first ones to deal with that. And they were struggling with it. They didn't know how to do it. So what they did actually was quite interesting. So they put a TV in the middle of the room, they put a few kids to the TV, and they started experimenting. Actually, they did it actually quite agile. So what they did is they tried something, and then they saw if it worked. And they tried and tried, and after a few iterations, they figured out how to do that stuff. So at first, they discovered that using colors is actually quite useful. So starting using colors. At first, they were also trying putting funny jokes in there, but kids actually, yeah, they're not playing a lot with jokes. There were actually too mature jokes that they put in there. So they were searching for the ways to tell them their jokes. Other stuff is that they're repeating stuff, continuously repeating. And they discovered actually that kids learn from that a lot. So, do you know Blue's Clues?
Yes.
A few of those guys who actually worked at Sesame Street took it even further. What they discovered, they didn't have that much budget. They stopped working for Sesame Street and they started making their own TV show. And in that Blue's Clues show, what they did is they discovered, yeah, they didn't have budget, so let's broadcast it every day and then we make weekly new broadcasts. But by doing that, they accidentally discovered that the repetition in there actually learns a lot for kids. So kids start learning when you do a lot of repetition. So, how do you make something stick and that people remember it afterwards? That's what this is about, stickiness factor. And I'm going to give you a few examples how I did that in my environment doing Scrum. So first of all, what is stickiness? It's actually marketing related. It's having unique selling points in a product. It's also about having factors that draw and keep your attention. So that's also the reason why I put this spreadsheet here, is I want to make something stick to you. So hopefully that works. So, but that's what this is all about. So if you're telling a story, and what you are telling is, for example, if you're doing knowledge management, how to spread that knowledge, how to make that story stick if you once tell it. Actually, you want to tell it once and make people remember that forever. That's actually what you're trying to do here. And what we found out, that using text is not that very handy. You talked about the SharePoints, that's also why I left that over there. There's a lot of stuff on there, but what we discovered is that, for example, if we were solving a bug, there was a memory leak in our system, and what we discovered that every time we solve the memory leak, there's a way of working towards finding that memory leak. So what we did a few times is we put that documentation, how we solved it, on a SharePoint and told people, look at it, so that's how we solve it. No one ever looked at that. Sound familiar? Yeah. So actually, putting lots of documentation on SharePoint is a very bad idea in my opinion. So how do you sell it then? Well, I have a nice example. I'm just going to skip this one and go to, I have to click it, otherwise it won't be difficult. Yeah. This is actually one of the guys in my team, what he did. He created a strip out of it. And this worked. He sent that around and people started reading it, and afterwards he got some nice comments. So this is actually cool stuff. So instead of putting a lot of text on the SharePoint, he just made this. This is one of the pages. I think it's a 3-page strip story. So it's quite short and people read it within 10 minutes or so. So like you already said, we want fast communication. We don't want elaborate stuff. We don't want thick documentation to read through. That is what people like. Actually what I'm doing now is I wrote a white paper on Agile defect management, how to deal with that. And I first wrote a white paper. First of all, I didn't like writing it. I hate lots of text, bunching that together and doing stuff with that. So now I actually looked at some videos, for example, the product owner movie from Henrik Nieberg. Anybody knows that? Also a Spotify movie from Henrik Nieberg. All those kind of movies. Actually, the story in there is good. But people like to share that story in a more interactive way. So I'm trying to convert my white paper now into a video as well. And that's actually cool stuff to work on. So you motivate people by telling a story. And that's actually what's happening here. So about that. Going back to this one, because actually this is also cool. This is a video, maybe you know it, I'm just going to play it.
That
Anybody knew that video? Yes. Yeah. This went viral. They published this on the internet. 2 days later, a few million people watched this. What happened the week afterwards, Mentos started selling those Mentos, and Diet Coke was being sold for over 2 months, more drastically than it ever did. This was not intentionally, but you can use this. If you make videos like that that attract people, you can actually use that for marketing. That's cool. So this is a virus that's spreading. Anyone knows the picture on the top? Who doesn't know? Need to explain that? So I use this during my daily scrums because there's a lot of people coming over to watch what we're doing, and they continuously interfere. I show them this picture and they completely understand it once I start explaining it. So there's this other video in there, but I'm just looking at the time. I think I will skip that one. I'll just tell the story behind it. I worked at Philips at that time, and we had an operations department who were supporting us and doing the builds and stuff like that. And whenever we had a problem, we had to go there and tell them, okay guys, we need help from you. But for some reason, they didn't take ownership. So what happened there is I went from one guy to the other, and then to the other guy, and then it was like walking in a Polonaise through the whole building and nothing happened. So I was quite frustrated about that, and I thought what to do about it. And what happens here in this video is Asterix and Obelix. Probably know them. It's a strip. Yeah. So they want to cross some sea and have to sign some form, and they go to some crazy town hall and try to sign the form, and then the same thing happened there. They're walking in a Polonaise, everybody gets crazy. It's kind of nice video, so watch it afterwards. It's online. So I actually went to a manager and showed her this video. I said, okay, I now tried this for 3 or 4 times. This is what's happening to me. This is crazy, help me out. And okay, at that point she didn't take it from me, so she didn't want to help me out. But 2 weeks after, she came to me, she said, you know what had just happened? I just went to the operations department and we did that Asterix and Obelix video in live, she said. I walked in the Polonaise. And then she realized those guys need help, this isn't working. So I planted something in her brain by just showing it. And I could have told that story 10, 20 times or read it on text or in a document, it didn't work. So this is about the stickiness factor. This is one of the most important pillars in my opinion. So if you tell a story, make sure that you have your story straight. So if you do knowledge management, make sure you think about it. But do not underestimate the impact of how you present it, because it really matters.
Power of visualization.
Power of visualization. So normally when I do slides, I don't use a lot of text. I just use images and I make sure that I have my story straight. That is actually one of the best tips that you can use. And you lose lots of more of this stuff, so if you want, you can share it afterwards. Stickiness. Second one, the law of the few. You see a lot of eggs here, and there's one guy in there that makes a difference. And that's what the law of the few is about. It's about, I had it many times also when I was working for Philips. There were a lot of people working there, obviously. So I went into a meeting where it was even fuller than this one, so there were 50 to 100 people in there, and I started talking about Scrum. But they weren't buying it. So I was sending out to a lot of people, putting a lot of effort in making PowerPoints and presentations, but they weren't buying it. So I thought, what the hell is going on here? And I was reading that book that I mentioned, and actually I found out that it's maybe more important to talk to a few guys who make a difference. And that's what this is about. So how do you find them, the law of the few? Actually, the research shows that there are actually 3 types of persons that can make a difference. And those are the types. Gladwell talks about the connector, the maven, and the salesman. And I'm going to explain all of them to you. The connector. Just read through it a little bit and I'll explain afterwards. Anyone want to react on that? Do we know a connector? Are you struggling?
It's a key thing if you want to do consulting as an external consultant. You need to find your champions of this nature.
Sorry?
Where the last sentence?
They use weak ties and yeah, I'm going to talk about that. That's an important one. Or you want to elaborate on it?
Not too much.
Okay, I'm going to elaborate on that one because that's actually the most important word in there. What you see here, did anybody ever try this? There's a LinkedIn plugin that you can use to see visually what your network is. Actually, this is the network I created when I was at Philips. So I worked at Philips Research first, and then I worked at Philips Healthcare, and those are the guys that I know. So this is me in the middle, and this is my home network. So those are my friends and my relations. And actually I was a consultant before, so this is my consultancy network in some way. So what you see is actually there are 3 physical different networks in here. What's about this weak ties instead of close relations? So weak ties are here, from here to here. So a close relation, those are all my friends, and they all know each other. So imagine if those guys were looking for a new job. It's actually probably not a very wise thing to start looking here, because in this network everybody knows each other, so you won't find new stuff in there. So the idea is for him to look for somebody like me who has a large network, maybe some more networks. Actually there's a new bubble here because now I work at ProAwareness, and that grew exponentially. It's maybe a smart thing for that guy to hook up with me and talk to me about that, because I can connect him to all the other networks. So that is actually what I'm doing when I'm doing a coaching assignment in the organization. I go to the people who have strong connections but also very weak tie. So I look for the connectors in the organization. And one of those guys in Philips, for example, was we were doing medical stuff. So there was a lot of MR and CT scanners in there, but there was radiation as well. So there was this guy who was taking care for the radiation badges. So if whenever you wanted to go to a test system, you had to get a radiation badge, and then with that badge you were allowed to go in that room. So that guy was managing all the badges. He was a strong connector because he talked to everyone in the organization, because everyone needed to go in that room. So I was using him if I had a story, and I implanted it with him, and within 2 or 3 days everybody knew the story. That's cool stuff. So if you look for those kind of people, that helps. Of course, Zuckerman with his LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually based on this. It's very cool stuff. So that's that. Connectors. The mavens. Read through it again. Can anybody reflect to that in their organization? Do we know a maven? Do we need to explain that? Probably.
Passionate guys who just want to learn, educate, share.
Exactly.
Those kind of guys are the...
Yeah. You remember, you see the pictures here below?
Not that clear, but...
That's the Oracle from the Matrix.
Oh,
Those kind of people. Those are the ones that you're searching. Those are the guys who went on a holiday. You went somewhere and they actually love to talk about that. They come back and they tell you, hey, you should go there because that and that. Actually, we had those guys as well. There was a Microsoft guy in Philips. Whenever we wanted to know something, I know I had to go to him, because he is the one who's actually trying to share the story. So, if you're a Scrum Master, look for those Scrum Masters who are enthusiastic about knowledge management. Look for that guy. That's actually cool, because he is actually, without any reward, he wants to sell the stuff for you without doing anything for it. He just likes it.
actually a Scrum Master should be a maven kind of person.
Actually, we don't have time for this, because in my XP Day session, I had a 2-hour session. I have a test. I have a test that actually you have to fill in some questions in the questionnaire, and afterwards you see which type you are. And I discovered that actually I'm all 3 of these types. That was strange. I thought maybe I should test it with someone else, but it really... So maybe that's why I was a good Scrum Master, because I had all these things in me. So maybe that's the way if you're looking for good Scrum Masters to search for.
But the Scrum Master wants to sell Scrum, right?
Yeah, yeah. So he likes it. He likes it, and that's why he wants to sell it and share the information.
And also, but you have to have a combination to make effectiveness.
Yeah.
Bring effectiveness.
Exactly. So that's what a maven is all about. And then we have the salesman. Yeah? Can you read a little bit? So, I had a little bit of awkward feeling when I read Salesman. I don't know if you ever went to a shop. Yesterday I did some shopping with one of my colleagues, and I went to a clothes shop. I went to buy some nice clothes for my kids. And there was a real salesman there. He came to us, and but actually that was a real salesman. I also bought my car, but that guy was really annoying. I didn't like him. Remember those guys? Probably you all know them. But a real salesman is charismatic. He talks to you, and within an instant of a moment you see, okay, this guy really means it. He doesn't want to sell it. Of course he does want to sell, but he's really, yeah, he cares about people. So there are some people who have that, and you can see those pictures below. You see the Dalai Lama, he has that instant, if you look at him, yeah, he's a nice guy, he means good. There's no double agenda there, he just means what he says. Those are the guys I'm talking about. So, to wrap that up, the connector, the maven, and the salesman. Those are the people you should be looking for in your organization. And if you implant that story that you want to tell to them, I'm sure it will hit. It will hit much faster than you talk to a whole group and then just keep sending. It costs a lot of effort. Spend your effort in those 3 people, because that makes a difference. And one of the nice examples was this pink ribbon initiative. You know about that? So breast cancer. There's an American woman who actually was annoyed about breast cancer, that people didn't get the message. So what she did is actually, she came up with this pink ribbon initiative. So you can buy pins and stuff like that. What she did is actually she went to conferences like these, but then for healthcare related stuff. And actually she's talking this message through and through and through, and she didn't get the people. Somehow the initiative didn't hit the floor. So what she then did, she thought, okay, who are really the people who care about this stuff most? And then she discovered, well, always when I'm doing a haircut with my hairdresser, that's where we have good conversations, because there are other women in there as well. And so she thought, maybe I should start there. And what she did is actually, she went to a lot of those hairdressers in America, and she started talking about the initiative, and she put those jars with the pins in there. And it hit, because the women who were coming there, those were the people who really cared about that stuff. So those were the real few that were selling that message for her. And that's how the Pink Ribbon Initiative grew. That's how we got familiar with that. So the law of the few. So now we have 2 pillars. We have the stickiness factor, and we have the law of the few. And the message is actually, don't do one of them, do them both. So if you start telling a story, make it stick, use visual stuff, but also search the people who really care about that, so they go along with it. So that's actually very important. But we're not done yet. We have a third. And that's the power of context. So, the power of context is actually the most difficult one. Because what is context all about? And it's important to look at these kind of stuff. Human behavior is sensitive and strongly influenced by its environment. You probably all heard about stories that when an accident happens, there's a lot of bystanders, but nobody really helps. That's actually because people start reacting in a big group like they are part of the group. So if the group doesn't move, they won't move. And sometimes it's happened that an individual starts moving, but normally people are influenced by group behavior. In the book of Gladwell, he talks about the metro in the early 40s in America. There was a lot of crime going on there. So they started wondering, what's going on here? What can we do about that? And they tried a lot of stuff. And at the end, putting people to jail didn't work. Giving tickets didn't work. Everything happened there, but it didn't work. And then they started realizing, maybe we should do something with the environment. So what they did is they started removing the gravity from the walls. And that worked. So what happened is that people started feeling more safe in that environment, and they started acting differently as well. So if you look at the environment, it's very important that you also take that into account when you want to do a change. Epidemics are sensitive to the conditions and circumstances of times and places in which they occur. And that's actually also, time is there in there. So there's a lot of environmental stuff that you can use to influence what you are doing. So how do we do that? In Scrum. Anybody knows the bystander effect? Actually, I talked about that.
I know the other one.
Yeah. Broken window theory.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
No, go ahead.
Yeah?
You continue.
So what happens with the broken window theory?
Actually, you can see it in your kitchen. If you keep this stuff on the plate,
Yeah.
then it will spread more and more items.
Yeah. Remember that one? I was a student, and I had 2 fellow students who actually didn't clean up their stuff, and I was very neat actually in the beginning. But for some reason I thought, okay, those guys are not cleaning up. I'm always cleaning up for them. Screw it, I'm not going to do it anymore. That's exactly what's happening here. So if there's a broken window somewhere in a building that's left, somebody throws in the window, I think a week after, all the windows are broken. That's exactly what this is about.
Now policies, public policies are based on that.
Yeah, and people really act in this way. I saw that many times. If you're in a big group, people, and once you take that group apart and you set your own rules, suddenly things start going. So the environment is very important. I remember at Philips, and luckily it's there as well, it was kind of boring environment. Correct, Sabir? At the beginning. But then we started realizing we should do something around here. So we went for a foosball table. And that worked really great. So people were enthusiastic and there was a vibe going on. And so something happened in the environment. For Scrum, it works the same way. There's something called channel capacity. Anybody knows about that? Look it up on Google. Channel capacity is actually, and especially if you talk about emotional channel capacity, it appears to be that if people in a group, if there are more than 7 to 9 people, then you cannot collaborate with them anymore. And that has to do with the size of your brain. They also tested that with primates, and it appears that because they have a smaller brain, the number is lower there as well. So real emotional bonding happens in human for 7 to 9 people. This is actually why Scrum says don't build your teams larger than 9 people. The research behind that shows that indeed if you are with 12 people, suddenly the group starts splitting up and have separate discussions. You don't want that. But that's behind it. This is all in the environmental stuff. Another one, transacted memory. Anybody knows about that? Also Google for it? Sharing. It's about, yeah. Actually what happens in a group, all the individuals, they have their memory and their capacity of their memory. And actually they do a lot of good stuff on that. But once you create a group, and a real good group, suddenly something happens that there is a sort of group memory in there. And how I saw that in a team that I worked, for example, is there was this one guy who was receiving calls from customers all the time. We actually didn't know about that. But because the group worked together and we all kind of nice understanding with each other, he just did that without any of us knowing of it. That's actually, it was embedded in our group memory. Let's put it like that. Once that guy left, suddenly we started getting phone calls from customers. Hey guys, what's going on? You're not answering our calls anymore. And we thought, what the hell is going on here? So without writing it down, without doing knowledge management on something was happening in that group. And that is transactive memory. So there is some understanding with each other, the way we work with each other, that is actually embedded in our group memory, which is not in individuals or stored somewhere on the network. That is what transactive memory is all about. So use that. And that's also why Scrum says don't break up your teams all the time. You lose continuously your transactive memory and you lose the ability to innovate. Very important stuff. And then, let's see how many time do I have left? 16 minutes? Okay, cool. Then I have enough time to show you a number of those videos because this is very important stuff as well. And I'm going to show you also how afterwards I use this. Does anybody know the fish video? Okay, cool. There's this fish market in America. They call it the Pike Fish Market in Seattle. And it's actually, if you look at it, it's just an ordinary fish market. But if you look some closer, this is the stuff going on there. It's really cool.
We notice that we can make a difference for people. Like when they come by, they leave in a better mood. And a lot of people have told us that we made their day.
Nice!
A customer came up to me and said it was the best fish they'd ever had. Something happened to me and I realized I was making people happy.
Well, this is a typical American thing, so it's a little bit over-marketed. But the philosophy behind it is actually really cool. So what happened there is they were just an ordinary fish market. And they thought how to attract more customers. How can we make our work nicer? And they just started doing crazy stuff, throwing with the fish and you know what. And that woman says, it's the best fish I ever had. There are much better fishes out there probably. What happened there is that because of the joy, there were people like coming there. So you do something in the environment which influences people, which make them buy you stuff there. That's crazy stuff. So actually, they started with a fish company. What they do now, if you look it up in the internet, they actually do seminars now. That's their core business. So they went from selling fish to doing seminars. How about that's cool stuff. So if you're an entrepreneur, and if you do this kind of stuff, it really can make a difference in your organization. If you look at awareness, for example, here in India, I see it as well, and in the Netherlands, we also do a lot of stuff in the environment. The colors of the walls, all that kind of stuff, it really matters. Don't underestimate that. Oh, on that. So, there's another one. Does anybody know The Voice? The Voice of India, is that a program? You know that? It started in the Netherlands. There was this Dutch entrepreneur who created that show. I'm going to show it to you.
Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water and I think of all the things what you're doing, but in my head since I come home and my heart has been spent and I feel so content and I feel like this. What's going on?
That guy's bad, isn't he?
But he got selected.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story behind it. Actually, I should have looked for The Voice of India or whatever the show is called, and to see if... Actually, you should look for the bad contestants, but who are authentic, because this guy is authentic. He just doesn't care about what happens. He just does his thing and goes crazy. And he made it second. He's worse. I mean, his voice is actually... It's called The Voice of Holland. There's no voice in them. And actually, he made it second. And the reason just because he was authentic. So if you are telling your story, don't tell somebody else's story. Tell your own story, tell it in your own way. That's very important. So it's also something in the environment you should realize about. So combine that with the other two and it's really cool if you're being authentic. And then the third video I like the most.
Christian, nice to meet you, Christian. Okay, do this for me. Think of a tune. I want you to get a tune in your head. And I want you to make it a tune that's well known, that people would know about if they heard it. Alright? I'm going to ask you to play it in your head, nothing out loud, but sort of whistle it or hum it to yourself. Just keep looking at me and just play the song in your head over and over again. There's a slightly stringy feel to it. Would that be right? Yeah, I imagine if it's a pop song, it's probably like with maybe a guitar and strings mainly. It's not like it's not a big band sound, but it is a band. So it's a band song. It starts off na na like that. Yeah, something ba da da ba. Is something like that? Keep looking at me. Right, now just turn up the volume in your mind. Turn it up so you make it louder, louder and louder, so you can almost hear it for real. Is it the verb? Is it the drugs don't work by the verb? I know he's evil, and I know that he's pure. I could see in his eyes that I was simply a baby lamb to the wolf. I could tell that this was going to end badly for me. I don't know. I'm not evil. I just sometimes go to great lengths to make these things happen. Good. Let's rewind back through Christian's day before he went to the pub. So that's one way of getting an idea into someone's head, and tonight's experiment is all about spreading an idea.
So that's scary stuff, isn't it? The guy is called Darren Brown. Look him up on YouTube. This is actually the start of a video where he's able to, there's a village with a stone dog somewhere in a park, and actually he convinces the complete village that if they touch the stone, it brings luck. Crazy stuff. But he's actually doing something that's called priming. Priming is influencing people by doing stuff in their environment, and he does shows. He's an illusionist who does shows a few times a year, and yeah, look at those videos. It's actually cool stuff, and I use this stuff as well, but I don't use it in a. This is a little bit too much, I think. If you use it like that, you are manipulating people. I call it helping people. That's what I'm trying to do. And actually, for example, what I do often at seminars, big seminars with a large room in there, as I start my session, I put on some music when the people come in. So what often happens when you are the first presenter in a session like that, people come in, there's a lot of rumor going on, and it takes about 5 to 10 minutes when you're doing a presentation to really get people into your story. If you put music on, you're actually priming them, and they're feeling more happy, and then suddenly, after 2 or 3 minutes already, it starts going on. So that's how I use it. But I also, if I talk to management, I'm not going to wait until that big board meeting. I'm going to talk to them before. So I'm going to talk to them a little bit here, and I already give them some ideas, and then I bunch it all together, and then I talk about them. So that's that.
This particular thing also had a stickiness factor. He kept on repeating it though at a subconscious level.
Exactly. Yeah, correct. And there's another video of Darren Brown that's really great. What he does is he gets a few marketing guys over, and he tells them that he's working for some company, he's working out a concept, and he doesn't give them any clues, and he says, okay, work out a concept for me. And then he comes back 2 hours later. Oh yeah, he gives him an envelope before he leaves. And then they come back 2 hours later, and there's all kind of sketchings on the board, so they did a lot of brainstorming, and then he opens the envelope, and 90% what was on the board is also in the envelope. What's going on here? But what he did is he actually, when he fetched them from the airport, he drove them through to the zoo and through some. So actually, and by the visions and the pictures that they got during the way, he actually convinced them to draw something that he actually wanted. So he's doing some crazy experiments with that, but it works. So you can really influence people if you feed them with the right stuff. To summarize all of that, use those 3 pillars. Don't focus on only one, because I see a lot of people focus on talking to the right people, do the stickiness thing, do something in the context. But if you're an Agile coach or a Scrum Master or a product owner in your environment, start combining all the 3 of them and see what the effect of that is. And I'm sure it will work out much faster than you normally do. So that's about this story. Looking at the time, we have 8 minutes left. So maybe it would be good to spend, with the same teams you had just before, spend some 3 minutes. Look at your own environment and come with your top 3 stuff that you want to do in your own team. Think about that and think of the first thing you'll do Monday morning when you start using this, and what are you going to change. And then let's collect them later on. So 3 minutes, and then we'll continue. Okay? Go.
Start collecting small advertisement tips relevant to the context, and when you're having lunch, you started playing them in the background. Showing the same message. Probably it was not me, but those ads and after a month I still said, how come we had a meeting again? I said, okay,
Knowledge management would be the first thing. You have some thoughts which will take in the team, and like also getting them involved in like coming up with some ideas about knowledge management. Like I think rather than you telling it from your own voice, I guess it's better you influence the small few, right, and ask them to tell the thing, to drive it. That makes more difference than you assembling so many people together and saying, you need to do the vital force, right? So that makes a lot of difference. You need to identify them.
We are not using it. After their discussion is over, not there.
Our leaders were proposing power tool, something like power tool where you can make cartoon just like your presentations were. It's very interesting.
Okay, so power tooling. Yeah, okay. So in the tooling you can do a lot. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah.
How you made this very good.
So I mean, the zooming and this stuff.
This is really good.
It is called Prezi.
Prezi, yeah.
Prezi.
It's a Prezi.
Yeah.
It's an online presentation tool, and it's actually it arose because people were annoyed by this PowerPoint stuff. It's boring slides, and actually they created with Flash platform to create new kind of presentation. It's online, so you can. This is actually you can find it online. You can share it publicly if you break one. My daughter now uses it in school too, and they really like it. Yeah. Cool stuff.
Is it still free or is it a commercial one? Because when I saw
it is free. Yeah. But if you start do sophisticated stuff, and if you want to use it offline on your laptop, and you can use it on your iPad as well, then you have to pay for it. But it's free, so still it is free.
You use the free stuff. Was this a free stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, these are the basic names.
Yeah. And you can link it to YouTube videos. So now they're embedded because I'm using it offline. Yeah. But you could also do YouTube videos, and you don't have to use a lot of storage space. So that's how I created this in the first place. Yeah. Other stuff.
So unconventional stuff for tackling the issue of latecomers for daily Scrum, right? In one of the teams where I was coaching, a lot of things didn't work. Yeah. Escalating, writing, and setting expectation. Yeah. So what the team did was they went and bought a most ugly looking doll in the market. Yeah. And they said whoever comes late 3 times excuse it, after 3, the person when is not there at the desk, the person gets a doll on the table. The whole floor goes, and they publish this as a working agreement in a transparent manner.
People coming late for the daily Scrum.
Yeah. And the person who gets it would never want to get it back in the life.
It is a thing, but it is like a punishment kind of. That person need to give her 10 rupees per minute.
Yeah.
And what happens is, after the sprint, the complete team goes for an out.
Yeah.
With that.
Actually, it's not saying that because it's like a paying 100 rupees traffic violation.
Yeah, but then we change the amount.
The amount is
that's cool stuff.
No.
At Prowennis in the Netherlands, we have something called the shame guy of the month. So the guy with the biggest screw up, you get to park his car right in front of the building. So they reserved a parking space for him there. It was cool.
So we used to have something called wall of shame.
Yeah.
So whenever there are build breaks, okay. So
there's an entry there.
Very powerful.
And also, in the previous company, what we did is when the build breaks, the person who breaks becomes the build monitor.
Yeah, that's a cool one. So if you break the build, do crazy stuff. I actually use lamps or lights or something like that. We had these red lights. If the build broke, it started, and somebody had to fix it. Otherwise, he was the shame guy who broke the build.
So what we have done in our team is that we had this ugly clown's hat. So whoever comes late for the stand-up, we just ask the person to wear the clown's hat for a minute, for 1 hour or so. So everybody walking on the floor knows, okay, this guy came late.
Yeah. That works well. That's cool. Yeah. So there was a question here on doing something physical, or
no? A little bit more positive things. I mean, all this stuff was on punishing.
Actually, I see it as a positive thing. The only thing is it's not a bad thing if you break the build. You learn from it. Failure is good. So actually, by doing nice stuff to that, it makes it positive. So it was a bad thing in the past because we were actually angry about the guy. But once we did that, it became a positive thing. So we combine that stuff and make it positive. And yes, of course, what you also Scrum also tells you, celebrate your successes. So we have a stakeholder, if you had a successful sprint review, celebrate that. Here what we do is we have on the Fridays, we have the big sprint day. And everybody shares the stuff that went well, and afterwards beer and cookies and hamburgers and stuff like that. Celebrate your successes is one of the most important stuff that we do. So,
yeah. About the good things, we have a wall.
Yeah.
Wherein we have a long flowing chart with the dates which we just write.
Yeah.
We have the names of everybody there.
Yeah.
So even if it's a small thing that he's done, we give gems to him and we write it there.
Yeah.
And even if it is negative, minus 50, 10, minus 10. So it's a running trend for about 2 to 3 months. And end of the day they accumulate something. We give them vouchers to how much they've accumulated. So
yeah.
everybody wins.
Cool.
So there's no concept of and that's cumulative until some point, like 3,000 or 4,000 gems you accumulate, you get a gift voucher.
Yeah, this is all kind of environmental stuff, but it's good. Thanks for sharing that. I hear that my time is done, so thank you all for the participation and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Ron, our own Agile Coach of Awareness. I'm sure you have more questions. Please write them down in your sticky note. We'll park them.